Welcome to the channel. My name is Jim, and this is going to be a quick review on the pellet stove back behind me. It's a PelletPro 130, otherwise known as a PP 130. You can see it blazing away right now. We kind of had a return to winter weather here in mid-March. It's actually spitting snow outside, 31 degrees. So that's why we have the stove running. Now, the PelletPro 130 is our third pellet stove for our family. We've lived here 28 years. When we moved here, we had a 1970s era, I should say, LP gas furnace. And it cost us out the butt 28 years ago to heat the house with that. So we decided to supplement early on with wood. And so our first wood stove burned stick wood. It was like kind of the warm morning type of stove, and it did a wonderful job. However, after several years of use, we got tired of all the mess with carrying in stick wood. It's just a messy proposition, because we'd have the wood piled on the front porch, and carrying an armload in at a time, or however you bring it in, you've got a trail of dust and debris that falls off your wood invariably. So we kind of got tired of that. So then we upgraded to our first pellet stove, which was a US stove 5500M model, 5500. And that was an excellent stove. Had no complaints about it. It gave us excellent service for years, until we developed a problem that even with the help of US Stove's technical customer support, we couldn't fix. And we had to have some supplemental heat, had to. So I got rid of that stove, gave it away basically for somebody else to fix or part out. It had plenty of good parts left, and you could have parted out the logic board on that stove. Was it sold anywhere from $300 to $500. So somebody could have just parted the thing out and made good money. I wasn't interested in parting it out. We wanted another pellet stove. So this stove was on sale at the time from Tractor Supply, a PelletPro 130. And there are excellent reviews on the PelletPro 130 model. It's a much simpler stove. The US stove had a complex multi-layer motherboard and an LED display, and you could adjust so many different parameters on that stove. You could adjust the feed, more or less pellets. You could adjust the fans for faster or lower, slower. You could adjust, the auger. I mean, there were so many things you could adjust on it. However, and we have found that logic boards are subject to, can be harmed by nearby lightning strikes, voltage pulses. So we replaced one of those logic boards for almost $500. But they're available on the secondary market for a little less. But it was a good stove. The 5500M was a good stove. So now with the PelletPro 130 behind me, it had about the same heat rating. I think 1,100, 1,500 square feet. But it's a much simpler stove to operate, simpler in the fact that the electronics are not as complicated. Now, every pellet stove has some of the same features, safety features. For example, a hopper lid safety switch to prevent it from feeding pellets when you've got the lid open, for example. And then it's got the vacuum switch and other switches that detect pressure in the stove. And if the door is open or cracked open and it's not holding pressure, it keeps the stove from working. Other things like that. Now every stove has two fans. Every pellet stove, we start over. Every pellet stove has two fans. One is the combustion fan that blows air through the burn pot to keep it blazing like you see. And the other fan is the room air fan that moves the heated air from inside the stove to the outside. Now the PelletPro 130, like I say, is much simpler. It doesn't have as many adjustable parameters, but I can't complain. It has done us excellent service. However, there is a design flaw, and I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a moment. Again, the stove has worked very well. I have no complaints about the stove. Now, another thing about the PelletPro 130, that company has a beautiful troubleshooting guide on their service manual, and it's like a flow chart. You know, for example, you can go to the page about auger isn't feeding pellets, and it starts at the top, and it will go through, is power, do you have power to the auger? Is the auger turning on? Etc., etc. Yes or no, and if no, it'll go to another part to troubleshoot. And yes, did that fix it? Yes or no? If no, another troubleshooting step. And it's wonderful. It has every function of the stove broken down into a wonderfully easy to use, easy to follow flow chart. Now the US stove had telephone support, but it didn't have this sort of documentation to help you troubleshoot. Now we had intermittent problems with the stove for a while, and I replaced the auger motor, and the auger motor wasn't bad actually, but it quit working, quit feeding pellets, and there were some other random issues we had. Anyway, to make a long story short, the problem for all well, you start over. The solution for the problems we were having was simple. It was the hopper switch, lid switch. Now on this stove, the hopper, if you fill it full of pellets, the switch for the hopper lid is actually down in the pellets. And I don't know this for sure, but I believe that that switch became intermittent after, you know, a year or two of operating. And sometimes I could lift the lid, cycle that switch, and then the stove would start. And I wasn't sure exactly if that had anything to do with it or not. But it got to the point where I changed the auger motor, and that didn't fix it. And all of my troubleshooting steps pointed to that there was voltage coming from the controller board, and the motor wasn't doing anything. Well, what blocks that? If the switch on that hopper lid controls everything. If that switch isn't closed, when you drop that hopper lid down, it stops the stove from doing anything. All right. And that's what was happening intermittently. That switch would not close when you close the hopper lid. It was still, and the reason is it had debris, pellet dust. If you run a pellet stove, you're familiar with the fine dust that come off the pellets. That switch was being blocked by pellet dust. So I finally realized that's what the problem was this year, or actually last fall. And so I simply removed the switch, and I jumpered the pins together on the switch. Easy peasy. It has worked flawlessly since I did that. And I have no intentions of replacing that lid, the hopper lid switch. So now we can leave the lid open, and it's not going to stop the stove. But it's not really a safety problem. It's something all stoves have generally, but it doesn't. Neither my wife nor I are going to get our hands down in that auger, because the truth is, you can't even see the auger unless you've got the last few pellets in the bottom of the hopper. Now this hopper will hold 2.5 bags at least, and we've actually gotten. Let's start over. The hopper will hold 2 to 3 bags depending on how low it is. And so once you have it loaded up like that, we can run it like this for a couple of days before we have to reload the pellets. And we've got some left over. I know this is mid-March, but we have some bags left, In fact, we were thinking that we might have to we wouldn't need the pellets for the winter. We would end up moving them to the barn, those in the pallet they're on, out to the barn. But we are going to need to burn pellets, at least for the near future, and maybe again before we hit April. Anyway, the PelletPro 130 is a heck of a stove. Once you, especially after I fixed that intermittent hopper switch, that was quite the problem. But it's really nice. It's really a sweet stove. It only has one control and knob, and you set it for the level of heat. Now it doesn't have a thermostat. It's not marked in degrees. But if you want to keep it romping like this, you turn it up 3/4 of the way or more towards full scale. And if you want less heat, you turn it down to like 1/4. And then once the stove reaches the room temperature reaches a certain level, the stove will shut off. And then when the room gets cold again, it'll kick back on. Now again, there's no markings on temperature wise. It's more comfort level, and but the stove does have a temperature probe for the outside, but it's actually behind the stove to let the stove know what the temperature is. Now once you turn the stove up to say 75% of full scale, it's going to run like this. And and it's getting pretty warm in here now. Of course, I'm wearing a sweatshirt. But if I turn it down to less than half scale, it'll slow the auger feed. It'll burn fewer pellets, and the stove won't burn so hot, which is what I need to go do now. Anyway, the PelletPro 130 is a winner. The company's documentation for troubleshooting is also a winner. It's one of the best manuals I've ever seen, and it makes it real easy. Even somebody who's not a handyman can go through the manual and its flow chart and help figure out what the problem is. All right, guys. Well, we're staying warm this winter thanks to the PelletPro 130, and I would recommend this stove to anybody. Just be aware that lid switch, that switch might at some point become intermittent, and if it does, you'll know what to do. Anyway, take care and thanks for watching, and come on back to the Shade Tree Garage. Most of my content is automotive related to classic cars, not pellet stoves. But I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. Come on back for more content. Take care, everybody. Let me do that again. Now, I know most of my content is almost all automotive related and stuff, but occasionally you get something like this, and I think this stove has served us well, and it deserves a review. And also, I think giving you a heads up if you buy such a stove, to be aware that hopper lid switch may give you trouble in the future, depending on how much pellet dust and dirt get down in it. And the simple solution is to remove it. If failing removing, you can leave it in place. Just connect the two wires together so that switch is permanently closed. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time here in the Shade Tree Garage.